From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Burke, and in every Blue Sky episode, we'll be speaking to leaders, researchers, and thinkers whose stories and insights will remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. Something we talk about a lot at the Optimism Institute is the fact that setbacks in life are inevitable. It's not a question of if bad things are going to happen to us, but rather one of when. And a second key question is how will we respond? My guest today is someone who, despite doing so many things to keep her body healthy, was diagnosed with cancer. In our conversation ahead, you'll learn how she dealt with this challenging news and how her life and work have changed in many ways for the better in the time since. Stacey Garcia first came to my attention as the host of the podcast Never Miss a Monday. As you'll hear, this title came from work she did as an athletic trainer, encouraging her clients to not miss a key workout that would start their week on solid footing. She got into training after growing up as a dancer, and now that she's recovered from cancer, she's expanded her work into her podcast, which she describes as featuring uplifting and transformative stories from incredible individuals who will share valuable insights and practical tips on not just making it through tough times, but indeed flourishing in the face of adversity. From that description alone, I'm sure you can see why I wanted to feature her on Blue Sky, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Stacey Garcia as much as I did. Stacey Garcia, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate you having me today.
Of course. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I'd like to talk about your life before May of 2024, and we'll get to why that's a significant date. But in my research, you describe yourself as a mom, personal trainer, Reiki master practitioner, integrative health coach. What drew you to those fields and to explore a career in those particular fields?
I love that. So Reiki actually was post May of last year. Reiki was during, we'll talk about that in a little while, but pre-May of last year, I grew up as a dancer. So I was third generation dancer in my family. My mother was a professional dancer, as was my grandmother. And it kind of was in my blood from the moment I could walk. I just loved to dance. And so that was my background. But my mother said, you have to get a degree. You need to fall back on something. And God bless, she did, because a dancer's span, really, it's not that long. And my best friend's husband is still dancing on Broadway in his late 40s, which is an extensive and amazing career, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's kind of unusual. So I got my degree in deaf studies, actually, strangely enough.
Really?
Deaf, not deaf, but deaf
with
an F. People are always like, deaf? No, deaf. American Sign Language. So I have my degree in that. And in my 20s, I was auditioning and taking jobs as I could get, working in a restaurant, waiting tables. I mean, really living that life of a dancer in Los Angeles. And 2008, around the time of the recession, I put all my stuff in storage and I was like, okay, I'm either going to move to New York and do this Broadway thing now or never. And my best friend, who has done incredibly well on Broadway, said, all right, Stace, you can struggle at home or you have family, or you could struggle here without family. And I ended up booking a gig in Los Angeles that was a lot of fun, called the Satin Dolls. And then I ended up meeting and started dating my husband, who owned a personal training gym at the time. And he invited me to join the team. And so I did a pivot and I studied with NASM, got my credentials, and I ended up joining his team. And I was there for 15 years as like their lead trainer, I designed a lot of different classes. I used my dance background to design dance-based exercise classes, Pilates classes, bar classes. And then I started like health and wellness coaching as well and got all my credentials in that. And so that was my life literally until May of last year when we closed up shop.
Yes. Okay. So that's our segue to the next part of the conversation. But I think it's all very relevant, particularly because it would feel like you're doing everything right in terms of your well-being, your personal health, and that sort of thing. But we're now going on almost exactly a year ago. You get the phone call nobody wants to get. Can you describe what happened?
No, absolutely. Strangely enough, and I just started talking about how we caught this lump, but I did find a lump in my breast last end of March. I think it was around March 28th. I had an incredible nightmare, and I'm not one to
Hmm.
remember my dreams so much as to actually woke up to like I was gasping. I sat up in
Ugh.
bed. I was freaking out. This terrible nightmare. And my husband sleeps to the right of me, and he kind of grabbed my chest, like, "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay." And then he said, "Uh-oh, what's that?" I'm like, "What's
Oh my
what?"
gosh.
So we found a lump in the middle of the night. The
Wow.
next day, I went for a mammogram, came back clean. They're like, "You're fine." No, I have something. So I had friends going through the journey, had already gone through the journey, advocate for an ultrasound. So I did.
Yeah.
A month later, got the ultrasound. They found stuff that was suspicious. Then you go through the biopsy process, and then you're waiting like on edge to get that call. And I got that call on a Monday morning saying, "You have cancer." And
Ugh.
it was just like that, where it was like, just like you said, like, wait, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I am 43 years old. I eat incredibly well. I exercise every day. I meditate. I'm like, I am checking off all the boxes. How did this happen to me? Right.
Yep.
It's just so
Eh,
wild. And so it was that thing where the following day, the day after my diagnosis, I was already meeting with my surgeon. That's how quickly everything
wow.
progressed. And my surgeon was like, "You've done everything right. Like this just happens." And I couldn't accept that answer, to be honest. Like
Right.
there's got to be a missing piece. And even though I do everything. And to be honest, these non-negotiables, I call them, these are my lifestyle practices. Like, thank God
Yes.
I had those already set because I leaned on the diet, the exercise, meditation so much more during the time of need. And then that's how I actually got into Reiki 2 weeks into my recovery from my double mastectomy.
And for people who don't know what Reiki is, I didn't until I researched this.
Hmm.
Reiki.
Hmm.
And what
Correct.
is Reiki?
So it's really an energy transfer. So the way I
Okay.
like to look at it, it comes from Japanese. So it's a Japanese energy healing, but has been around for thousands of years.
Okay.
And so everyone is so familiar with acupuncture, and that's like the Chinese healing modality. So this is the
Yes.
Japanese form that doesn't involve needles.
Gotcha.
So I'm pretty much a vessel. And so I've learned to
Yes.
be a vessel and using energy for me into someone else. And it's so strange because you think like practicing Reiki on someone will leave you depleted. You actually get Reiki back from that person. So you actually feel invigorated at the end of the session. It could
Amazing.
be light touch or no touch at all, just hands hovering. And we're able to really like intuitively feel where there's energy blockages. And you can
Yes.
even work on injuries. Like I've helped people with inflammation and injuries, helped heal injuries, as well as really the mental, spiritual game of it all, of like pure relaxation. The best way I can describe it when I leave a Reiki session is I feel so enlightened.
Huh.
Like I can just drive, in Los Angeles, which is crazy drivers, and just you don't care about anything. You're just so relaxed and so aligned with your authentic self. It's really an amazing practice.
When we're diagnosed with an illness, we tend to believe that there was something we could have done to prevent it. Of course, this is sometimes true, but often, including with many cancers, the problem is completely out of our hands. After struggling to understand how this disease could come into her life, Stacey Garcia quickly decided to focus on advocating for herself and later for others who are struck with the myriad challenges presented by a tough diagnosis. Now that she's largely on the other side of this ordeal, she's focused on a survivor's mindset and on helping others get through the challenges that she withstood. Getting back to our conversation, we'll learn about Stacey's podcast, Never Miss a Monday. I came across you based on your work as a podcaster.
Yes.
And a couple of questions about that. As I understand it, you were thinking about doing a podcast, because who isn't these days? But
Correct.
You were thinking about this before your diagnosis, but started this podcast after. And I'd like to talk to you about that. And also, you have an incredible title for your show, which is Never Miss a Monday.
Thank
So
you.
let's talk about how you thought about this podcast based on this diagnosis. And then also, what is this about Mondays and you?
I love that. Okay. It's such a great question. So you're right. I was thinking about this. I took a podcasting course from my mentor, Laura Cathcart Robbins. Adore her. She had a very successful podcast and she has written a memoir and she's just phenomenal. So I took a course from her and I was hooked. I was like, I definitely want to do something with this. Her partner is actually my podcast producer, Scott Slaughter.
Oh my gosh.
And so
okay.
I hooked up with him and we had all of these ideas for this health and wellness. And both of them were clients of ours at the gym. So they've heard me say for so many years to all my clients, never miss a Monday workout. If you get your Monday workout, you'll most likely show up on Tuesday, Wednesday. So I really realized that you have to set all of these amazing goals the start of your week. And listen, everyone has different schedules. You could start it on a Thursday, for goodness sakes.
Sure.
But starting on that one day to set up your week really sets you on the right track for success. So that's how the name Never Miss a Monday started. Health and wellness practices, you got to start Monday. You can't sleep in. You got to jump out of bed and go on Mondays. And then you're right. Then shortly after I completed the course, I was diagnosed. And so I was like, okay, I'm having surgery in a month. I don't know what this is going to look like. But what I ended up doing to stay connected was I started an audio diary every single day, starting from the morning at 5 a.m, going to the hospital to pretty much every day for a month or two during my recovery of how everything was going, my highs, my lows. And in my first season, we actually used those raw audios of me as like a cold opening. So everyone could kind of understand what the theme of that episode was going to be and what I was going through in that moment. So
amazing.
That was pretty neat that I thought about doing that.
Yeah.
And then I don't even remember when I started recording, but it was a matter of months after recovery, really getting into it. And I couldn't be more blessed. It had a bit of a pivot, right? So I started having more like cancer survivors. And my first episode turned into a season of survivorship and survivorship mindset. So I brought on lots of different survivors. For instance, my good friend was patient zero COVID days. He was the first one hospitalized in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh.
And he had less than a 1% chance of survival. And he is flourishing. And so him and his fiance were on because the mindset, even of his fiance, of every day getting these really inspiring, motivational texts, even though her partner was ventilated and unconscious and collapsed lungs and sepsis and all these things, how her energy, it's all energy, right? How her energy and the power of prayer and positive thinking really helped lift him out of this. And so there was definitely a pivot, but a really awesome pivot for my podcast, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think what drew me, well, starting with the title, I'm not going to dwell on that. I want to push on this whole Monday thing, because one of the things I try to do in this work is talk to people who work on the very things that make us pessimistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no more pessimistic day of the week for a lot of people than Monday. And, you know, you get the Sunday scaries. Why do you get the Sunday scaries? Well, because tomorrow's Monday and there's songs. And Monday is not an uplifting song, or rainy days and Mondays always get me down. I mean, it's just like Monday morning quarterbacking, second guessing. Mondays are often associated as the worst day of the week. So where in your life or your training or your practice did this never miss a Monday thing jump out at you?
That's such a great question. I think kind of towards the beginning, I realized And it's another thing I love is self-care Sunday. So you don't want to go super hard on Sundays with social events because then you will be kind of fatigued on Monday.
Yeah, right.
So Sunday should be more of like a day of rest. And I know if you're a parent and if you have kids in sports, it might not be so restful, but making sure you take time for yourself, especially for self-care on that Sunday. You want to be able to jump out of bed on Monday. And listen, if you don't feel like doing it, do it anyways. Mel Robbins has an awesome thing that she talks about with when you can't get out of bed. It's like closing your eyes and say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just count down, and when one hits, you're up, no matter what, And so I have certain practices that help me do that every morning. So my alarm goes off at 6. I have a meditation, a guided meditation I do in bed up to like 10 minutes. I do not go on my phone. And I get straight up, and I actually do standing meditations that I have with my Reiki practice. And I'm doing all this before. So I'm really centering myself before anyone else is awake in the house and there's no movement. And that helps so much because if you think about getting up and not outputting, but inputting energy, it's a game changer. So not answering texts from last night, emails, like not giving out. You need to have all of that energy stored. And that helps a lot more with those Mondays, honestly. And I tell everyone, Mondays are not the easiest day of the week, but if they are the most important, and you'll feel so much better when you complete X, Y, and Z on that Monday. And you'll see, it's just with experience, you'll see how much easier Tuesday is and Wednesday. So then it turns into habit. And so it takes a hot minute in order to realize how important these Mondays really are.
I love that. You mentioned doing this before the rest of the house wakes up. So I'd like to just talk for a few minutes about the rest of the house. Because one of the challenges of getting a tough diagnosis like that is like, oh gosh, how do I tell my family?
Yes.
Could you share with us what that was like? Because there are people listening who have gone through that, might be going through it soon. Can you talk about how you dealt with that difficult part of this whole journey?
Absolutely, Bill. That was probably the most challenging, to be honest, because my husband and I had different ideas of when and how we'd want to present this information. So my husband, unfortunately, his mother became sick when he was 8 years old.
Ooh.
And she was very ill. And so he had a totally different upbringing. So he was very sensitive to that. Like, let's not tell the kids until we have information, till we have a surgery date. And I had to be really respectful of that because of the way he was raised. Because unfortunately, when you get a diagnosis, you don't know your stage. You don't know your treatment plan. There's so many unknowns before surgery. So that was something where I was like, okay. I'm one to like really let my kids in on a lot of stuff and be very honest and transparent with them. So I ended up doing a lot of research. I ended up contacting a social worker. She gave me lots of videos of how to tell your children. I had a friend who recently went through cancer, breast cancer, and she gave me a lot of books. So I had those on hand. And I decided I want to break this news to them, but then have something really fun to do afterwards to kind of distract them.
Yeah.
And that's
how
what
old
we
would
did.
they have been at the time?
At the
A year
time,
ago?
my daughter was 10 and my son was 7.
Yeah. Tough age.
So they understood, and especially my daughter, my son had a harder time, honestly. But telling them and really, letting them know the facts. My prognosis was good. They felt like they caught this pretty early. So I let them know, mommy's going to have a surgery, which I knew I was going to have. Mommy's going to be okay, but we're really going to need to work together as a family here. And so strangely enough, I even interviewed my kids in my second episode of like silver linings, because we always talk about silver linings. And my daughter learned how to cook and do laundry and things that most kids her age couldn't do. And to this day, she still makes dinner for us one night a week.
Really?
So there are silver linings. They took the news really well. We had a great night at the Hollywood Bowl, but then with every day passing, the questions started coming. Which was good. It was the way that they were processing everything. So the best advice I could say when telling kids about news that is kind of still unknown is giving them just what they need, the facts. Don't overshare. right? And then let them ask a lot of questions and answer as honestly and optimistically as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to hear how Stacey and her husband thoughtfully approached letting their children know about Stacey's medical condition and what lay ahead for the family. In short order, they began to see silver linings to this setback, including Stacey's daughter learning at a young age to cook and do laundry, which any parent would agree is a terrific side benefit. And since she brought it up, I'll add my own encouragement for listeners to start their mornings without their phones or other gadgets, to allow some personal time to get in a calmer, better state of mind before opening the Pandora's boxes that our phones and computers tend to be. You'll hear some more about all of that shortly as we get back to this blue sky conversation with Stacey Garcia. Let's talk about silver linings in general too, because this is something you didn't ask for, you wouldn't have asked for, but coming out the other side, can you share what it's been like to, some say it's, getting cancer is like joining a club that you never wanted to be a member of, but it's a club.
Yes.
And, from my limited experience, lost a dear niece to cancer. For our family, I think you develop a level of empathy and understanding that just doesn't happen unless you've gone through it. Can you describe if that's among the silver linings and what some others might have been in this whole journey?
Oh, this is absolute. I mean, as soon as I was diagnosed, I felt so thankful, honestly, that it was caught so early, because a lot of people, it's not caught so early. I also had a sense of, okay, no more sweating the small things, because I realized I was coming out of an incredibly stressful year. So the only thing I could think of is like, I was doing everything right, but maybe this chronic stress really led to that. My sister gifted me early on with Reiki sessions, and that was a huge silver lining of learning this alternative form of self-healing. And I loved it so much, I became a Reiki master shortly after. I mean, this was such a silver lining. And then the community, that was everything for me. The people that showed up in all different ways, I had never felt so supported in my entire life. And so there was, there's roller coasters with recovery. I was in the ER a couple times with possible infections, and I was so scared. And my cousin holding my hand, she's like, go to your happy place, go to your happy place. I would close my eyes and I would be surrounded by the people. It wasn't a location. It was the community outreach. And so I realized how incredibly important community is when you're going through something like that too, which made me realize I need to start this podcast soon. Like, I need to develop this community. I need to educate, because when you show up in a doctor's office and they tell you like you have X, Y, and Z to choose from, you don't realize there's other modalities out there. So that's another thing. Silver linings of like, I decided to go a more holistic route after surgery with my treatment. And not everyone realizes that's actually an alternative as well. You don't have to really go through this protocol. So there are all the silver linings really I want to share with everyone, that this is not necessarily a death sentence. And I do have friends that have stage 4 and are terminal, and what they've done with their positive outlook and how they're giving back is so incredibly inspirational. And so those really have been the biggest silver linings for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about those friends at stage 4, because I think one of the challenges, I assume, you may or may not experience this, but when you talk about these things, there are people in the audience who have relatives who didn't survive, who it was just too late, too serious. How do you work with that? That can be, is there survivor guilt? Is there resentment? Sometimes when you talk about these things, it's like, well, they tried everything, but they didn't make it. Is that something that you deal with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be honest, what is so amazing about people that are usually in stage 4, they're not taking away your experience in stage 1. They're actually seeing you more then those that are like, oh, well, you caught it early. You're so
Mm,
lucky, Well,
yeah.
no, everyone goes through the uncertainty, right? Of like not knowing where it's at, not knowing what your treatment plan is. And everyone also goes through like, oh my God, what can I do so this doesn't come back?
Yes.
Because, reoccurrence is always on your mind as well.
Sure.
So I really believe with me personally, the fact it was caught so early and I had such a great outcome, I felt like since I am healthy, I need to give back to the community. I
Yes.
need to help educate. I need to help support others going through this. I'm using my recovery as a gift to help others.
Yeah. Amazing. And so one of the ways you are expressing that gift is the podcast. Let's talk about
Yes.
Never Miss a Monday, the turn it took after you were diagnosed. Tell us about the podcast, what you're trying to accomplish, the kinds of people you pursue and have on the show. Paint a picture for us, and we'll encourage people to go check it out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the first season was all survivorship. So you'll hear lots of survivors, but you're also going to hear from a lot of people that help support me along the way. But they're a survivor in different ways. Everyone has a story. So hearing about all different kind of situations and ailments and how the positive thinking really helped them through. That was season 1. And I loved season 1 so much. Season 2, we're midway through right now, and it's empowerment mindset. So it's
Okay.
people really using their platform for the betterment. And what makes someone have this empowered mindset, the different characteristics. So all different kinds of guests, people from all around. I'm getting a lot from New York, which is super exciting.
I bet.
And so that's the podcast in a nutshell. We talk a lot about my non-negotiables, and I ask everyone what their non-negotiables are. I would love to hear your non-negotiables too,
Uh,
Bill. Like
that's
what
a good one.
practices you use every single day to keep
Yeah.
your amazing mindset.
Well, I'll share one of yours. I share one of yours, which is not starting the day on the defensive on the phone.
Yes.
I keep it in a different room. I start with quiet time. I start with getting my own self together in the various ways I do it before I even open a laptop or look at email. Because once that starts, you've lost control of your time and your energy and all that. So that's a huge part of it. I'm a huge believer in exercise. I try to eat well. And, my wife and I joke about it. Every once in a while, we'll look at each other and I'm like, you need to go swim or, you need to get your workout. And I find the consistency with that as best you can is really huge.
Yes, consistency is key.
Yeah. And I haven't thought about the Monday thing. I mean, I certainly had when I was a school kid and certainly had some jobs where I would get the Sunday scaries. I will say doing this work I'm doing now, I don't anymore. So I think a lot of that has to do with how you're feeling about what you actually do on Mondays as a
So true.
profession or whatever. Yeah. So I share a lot of what you've done. I was new to the concept of Reiki, so I'm going to have to check that out. It sounds very cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So now that you've done that first season of survivorship, is there anything you learned in talking to people where you thought, "Ooh, that might have been helpful," or "Gee, that's one I
Oh,
hadn't thought
every
of."
single conversation. I'm
Yeah.
always jotting notes like, what books did you read? Because everyone has certain books that are like game changers for them. So I
Interesting.
have a
Yeah.
lot of people like growth mindset is
Yeah.
huge in survivorship, empowerment. If you want to get your mind where you want it to be, like it's all about growth. And so hearing about what people are reading is
Yeah.
always really inspiring, and tips and what are their non-negotiables is huge, because then you learn a lot about how they get to where they are.
Interesting. And on books, and you mentioned this sort of positive outlook that a lot of the survivors had. A book that comes up a lot on this show and that meant a lot to me was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and
Ooh.
what he talks about. Put this on your list. He's a survivor of the Holocaust. He's since passed away, but he lived a very long, very fulfilling life once he got out. And his observation, and it's been backed by a lot of research, is that there are various reasons why he wouldn't survive the Holocaust, but the prisoners who survived had this meaning on the other side. They had this thing to keep thinking about, whether it was family, my profession, the amazing things I'm going to do when I get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's shared also by people going through a cancer diagnosis, which is, okay, this is going to be awful. This is going to be really hard. But boy, when I get on the other side of this, I mean, does that come up?
I think that's the secret of life.
There you
Honestly,
go.
it really is, because cancer or no cancer, any challenges we have, it's easy to get stuck into the now. But
Right.
to get over that hump, and you have to really think long term and how everything is temporary, right?
Yes.
That is so important. That was super important in my cancer recovery, absolutely. And I utilize that every day when there's
Yeah.
challenges, is really like thinking about what's ahead and what to look forward to. Absolutely.
It's sort of, and that this too shall pass mindset,
Yes.
can be helpful. I liked hearing how, not long after her diagnosis, Stacey Garcia was feeling, of all things, gratitude. It started with being thankful for a relatively early diagnosis, then appreciating the smaller things in life, as well as the incredible community response to her illness. She started her podcast to continue to build out a community online, and as she says, to use her recovery as a gift. I was interested to hear her emphasize her non-negotiables, and I'd be curious to know how many people listening to this have taken the time to consider their own. Her question to me made me think, and I believe this could be a fruitful exercise for all of us. Also helpful is the mindset that Stacey describes as the secret of life, understanding that everything is temporary, and we'd all do well to keep our attention on the good that could be on the other side of our current struggles. When you get into this work, there's all these debates about what's optimism, what's hope, what's the difference, what's that, and the glass half full, half empty, which I don't like. So I've coined my own definition of an optimist, which is someone who thinks that tomorrow will be better than today, and that they have a role to play in making it so. And that last part, I think, for me, is really important, because a lot of people think about optimism as you just sit around and twiddle your thumbs and you just think things are naturally going to get better. But you really have a role to play. And I sense from you in every fiber of your being that you believe in that.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
No, absolutely. I believe that optimism and happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
I do believe that some people naturally are more optimistic. It's kind
Sure.
of in their DNA. I
Sure.
feel like my parents were very optimistic too, but I
Interesting.
also believe it's a practice in consistency, and kind of reframing like consistency and having a schedule and doing all of these things. It's really self-love.
Yeah.
Like discipline is self-love, it's self-care,
Right.
And so I really do believe that everything is a choice. And I love how you quoted that. I use an Audrey Hepburn quote a lot, and it's something, I don't want to butcher it, but something like, planting a garden is to believe into tomorrow. And so
Yeah.
I'm huge
Right.
into planting my gardens, because I do believe that it does help. Going there every day, watching something physically grow to fruition is
Yes.
actually like a metaphor of life, right?
Yes. Well, and on that, talking about the future with someone in your stage of all this experience, you mentioned earlier the fear of relapse. How do you deal with that? How do you recommend? What have you learned from others about that? Because everything's different. Like you said, you don't sweat the small stuff, which is a
Mm-hmm.
massive silver lining. And when people say, "Oh, I hate Mondays," we're like, "Yeah, but it's not as bad as having cancer," right? The things
Right.
don't seem as bad. How do you deal with that potential sort of cloud hanging over your head and that worry?
Hmm. That's a really good question. So I went an alternative route with reoccurrence. So I was put on something called tamoxifen, a chemo pill. They were going to put me on it for 5 years. And they didn't really tell me what it was going to do to me, because I'm sure everyone's different.
Sure.
It it literally took away my quality of life.
Huh.
I was exhausted. I had vertigo, I had nausea, I had all these things, but the worst was I had no energy. I felt depressed because I couldn't live. and
Yeah.
I love to live.
Yeah.
And I lasted 4 months on this drug, and I started doing heavy research on it. And then I found out, so this drug is based on your rate of reoccurrence. So they're able nowadays to test the tumor for your rate of reoccurrence. Okay. They give you a percentage. Mine was so low. Mine was like 4% of coming back if you take tamoxifen. Okay. Well, who funds the study? Tamoxifen. Well, what
Right.
if I choose not to take it? Does the 4% go to 5% or does it go to
Yeah.
30%? There's no
Right.
studies out there because it's a big pharma study, right? So it took me a second. I started meeting with homeopathic doctors and finding ways to get the same result with feeling like myself again. And that's the way I chose to go. And I actually met with my oncologist not too long ago, and I let her know I had to go off of it. I felt like I was starting to make excuses, and she stopped me. She's like, "Stacey, I'm really happy that you're feeling really well. Quality of life is everything." And so that actually took a lot of pressure off of me. It's continuing to do everything that I'm doing, but I really do believe that stress really is the worst thing for us. We could do everything. We could eat incredible. We can exercise every day. But if we don't deal with what's going on in our head, it's not doing any good. So it's really a mental practice every day. It's not just only meditating in the morning. All day
Right.
long, I'm taking intentional deep breaths and slowing my heart rate down. And if I have negative thoughts, I replace it immediately with gratitude, because our brain cannot hold negativity and positivity in the same vessel. So
Right.
it's learning how to do these shifts, not repressing. I mean, feeling your feels for sure, but don't dwell and sit in it. So that's really where I'm at when it comes to the reoccurrences. I never miss a Monday anymore, ever. Not like I did much to begin with, but like
Yeah.
exercise is so important when it
Yeah.
comes to making sure this doesn't come back. Listen, we can't always be in charge of all of the externals and the environmental factors and
Of
all of
course.
that. We can just be in charge with what we're able to be. So it's also remembering that you kind of have to let
Yes.
go a little and be like, I can only really focus on what is attainable, not as, so it's really also switching that mindset of like, it's possible, but let me do everything that I can in order to continue with this healthy life. I feel healthier and happier now than I did pre-cancer. So I
Amazing.
know I'm doing something right.
Yeah. Well, and another obviously important determinant of whether you get through something like this is early detection. And as I heard you
Yes.
tell their story, it sounds like you were a great self advocate. So while you have this audience,
Yes.
how do you recommend to people to make sure if they think something's wrong, how do they sort of continue to push and get what are your recommendations for
Thank you for asking that
prevention?
question. It's really, really important. And unfortunately, a lot of women with breast cancer are getting diagnosed before they're actually getting the screening done. So screening starts at 40, but we're seeing a tremendous uprise in women in their
Yeah.
30s and even
Yeah.
20s. So
Right.
that's where it comes to self-exams. Just getting to know your body. And if you feel anything different, don't wait, go right to the doctor. See anyone that can see you. Mammograms, unfortunately, do give you a dose of radiation. So it's a little
Yeah.
counter and, productive. Ultrasounds really are the way to go, but there is no perfect form of screening. So maybe even alternating or asking for an ultrasound along with a mammogram is a great way to go about it. But the best thing you could do is self test, because you will feel something quicker than you'll see something in a
Right.
scan,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. And if there's just that one test offered, pushing for sonograms, if you're not satisfied, don't be satisfied and keep
Exactly.
speaking up.
Oh, absolutely. Just you have
Right.
to advocate for other stuff. So, unfortunately, with women, there's something called dense breast tissue, and those women, the mammogram won't show anything.
Right.
So, and that's like, I don't even know the percentage, but I think that's half of women. So, it's
Right.
not the best testing modality. Ultrasound is a lot more sensitive.
Yeah.
So just really pushing until you have those answers, and then pushing for earlier dates. And then also pushing to do your own research, getting second opinions. Ideally, I wish there were more integrative physicians out there where you
Yes.
have someone with the PhD and the knowledge in research and the knowledge in alternative care along with an MD. Right now,
Yeah.
most of it is out of pocket and incredibly expensive, and there aren't that many around. So, it's also kind of looking for the right people to be on your team that you really
Yeah.
trust is so important too.
Stacey acknowledges that we're all born with different levels of inclination to be optimistic or pessimistic. But she believes that optimism is a choice and a practice. And as she deals with any fears of a possible cancer relapse, she focuses on controlling what she can control while supporting others in various stages of this cancer journey. And I'll underscore what she says about self-advocacy. Our healthcare system and professionals are stretched and taxed, and often it takes an extra effort to get the attention we might need. In Stacey's case, pushing for an ultrasound might have even saved her life. Now, back to the final segment of my Blue Sky conversation with Stacey Garcia. Yeah, and one of the things when you mentioned gratitude, which we're huge advocates of here, I think that gratitude feeds optimism. If you can think about all the things you've had in the past or have today that you can be grateful for, it sets you up to think there's more coming, right?
Absolutely.
And it's really helpful and important. And I think one of the things that should be on all of our lists to be grateful for is just the advancement in medicine,
Absolutely.
different types of medicine, access to all this information. I know sometimes it drives doctors crazy because someone sees an ad on TV and says, I want that yellow pill. And it's like, well, wait a second. But it's a great time to be alive in terms of all these resources and the technology and treatments and ways of detection that didn't exist not that long ago.
Agreed.
Certainly not in our parents' lifetime. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then old-fashioned things like Reiki that I'm using in a sentence many times during this.
Yeah, you
this
should really look
conversation.
into it. You can even do remote Reiki, which is
Oh
unbelievable.
my
And
gosh.
another thing that I actually started, well, I've always loved to walk and jog. I've always loved it.
Yeah.
My kids go to school in Ventura County, and it's
Yes.
very lush and there's trails everywhere. So that's something else that I started. I started really looking into forest bathing and reading books on Japanese forest bathing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do that a few times a week because that actually helps with cell like regeneration and ultimate health. And so that's another thing that I've been doing is that's a huge silver lining for me. That brings me the most joy.
Yes. You may have heard about this. This book was written, and I always forget the author's name, and I always have to look it up after the interview. There's a great book called The Last Child in the Woods. And it was written, I want to say in the 90s. It was pre-social media and all that. And the writer coined this expression, nature deficit disorder. And he applied it to kids. And it was a time when we really started to diagnose all these kids with attention deficit disorder, which is a thing, and a lot of kids have it. But it was definitely, I believe, over-diagnosed, over-medicated. And his point was, these kids aren't getting out in nature enough.
So true.
They're not walking barefoot with grass under their feet. They're not. And I continue to sort of beat that drum because I think it's a really important issue for young people. And as we move indoors or we worry about kids playing in the street, which I get, we're denying them something really important. It sounds like you're fortunate to live in a great area, but you also are exemplifying this and creating a good example yourself for your kids.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much an epidemic, I feel like, at this point and with this generation. And it is really, really sad because there are a lot of places it's not safe to go outside. And so we do drive to get to these places. Like it sometimes is an hour drive to get to their school. But what I see when I'm on my nature walks, I see a PE coach and a lot of kids coming from the high school, and they do nature walks in lieu of PE. So they're out in nature. Like I saw that and I was like, sold. Like that's all I need. I mean, that is everything. And our kids too, like they get to go out on hikes every once in a while too. And they are surrounded. And I always joke with my kids, we're big Disney people. And in Toontown, they have like this pretty scape of these ultra green hills. And that's what it looks like at their school. I mean, everything is so green. Thank God for all the recent rain we had, but it's picturesque. And I even asked them, do you guys ever take a second and just look at this beauty that surrounds you? And they're like, no. I was like, well, I do. And I just love every second of it because you don't know how lucky you are to be going to school in this area and to be surrounded by nature.
Yeah. So as we approach the end of our time, I'd like to go back to the whole Monday concept, which I love. And let's paint a picture. It's Sunday. It's early afternoon. I remember as a kid when I heard that 60 minutes tick, 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 tick after the game, it's like, oh gosh, I got homework I haven't done. It would start. Walk us through sort of Sunday afternoon into the week and how you'd recommend somebody approach this never miss a Monday mentality.
I love it. I would spend a little bit of time planning the week. You don't have to sit down with pen and paper unless that's your jam. That's great. Sometimes I like to plan the meals for the week. Sometimes I like to do more self-care. We'll take like an Epsom salt bath and do like facials and, stuff like that with my daughter. Anything that kind of grounds you and brings you together in a connective way where you're feeling like you're inputting, you're not outputting as much. Because the more that you input, the easier when that alarm goes off on Monday morning, you're going to feel so blessed and so rested and ready to start the week. But I agree with you, Bill. I think you have to be excited about what you're doing that next day. So even if you're at a job that you don't love, looking at glimmers, like little glimmers are opposites of triggers. Little bits of joy throughout your day is so incredible. So really looking at the positives of everything. So Sunday is as much rest and relaxation as possible and being together and kind of slowing down, maybe staying off technology a little bit. And, everyone's kind of different. So again, if you're one to really want to plan or do a little meal prep to anything that will help your Monday. For me, it's more of really rest and relaxation with my kids, not doing too much social on that Sunday afternoon, getting to bed at a decent hour. Sleep is so important. So making sure that you have, all of that ready to go. And so Monday morning, alarm goes off and you're ready to go and you have a great day.
I love it. And it reminds me of a shift that someone described to me, which is the have to versus get to shift.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think particularly for people who have survived a scare like you have is, I have to go to work tomorrow. I have to work out. How about I get to go to work tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
I get to work out tomorrow. It's a very subtle thing, but it's a huge shift. And it seems to me you embody that in everything that you do.
Absolutely. I think that's the best advice you can give someone is reframing all the time. I get to. Not everyone has two legs that can work. I exercise as it's gratitude. I'm so thankful that I have this body that is able to go on these walks. So it is completely a mindset shift. Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. I am going to encourage everyone to check out Never Miss a Monday. I assume they can find them wherever they get their podcasts. Yes. And I really appreciated your time today. I've enjoyed doing the research for this interview, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Bill.
I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Now it's time for my all too frequent apology to author Richard Louv, who wrote The Last Child in the Woods and coined the expression nature deficit disorder. I don't know why his name always escapes me, and I will try to do better. Related to his work, I love the idea Stacey shared of her kids' school taking nature walks during phys ed class. And this conversation with Stacey was a great reminder of the have to versus get to mindset shift that can be a really helpful tool in living a life of gratitude and optimism. I hope you enjoyed this Blue Sky conversation with Stacey Garcia. Please tell us what you thought by leaving us a rating or review. And to be sure you don't miss any other episodes, subscribe to Blue Sky wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. All graphic design and cover art for Blue Sky and the Optimism Institute are provided by Crush Graphics. That's Crush with a K if you'd like to check out more of their fantastic work at crushgraphics.com. And all of our Blue Sky episodes are made possible by the incredible editing and mixing done by the team at Sound On, Sound Off. You can learn more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.